Hey everyone! Today, I'd like to talk about a really interesting topic. I've been getting requests for a video on this for quite some time now. The topic of raising children, or how kids grow up. Many people are currently confused because of all these new realities coming to light. Things about attachments, about awakening, about egregores, about society's programming blocks, and so on. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone who cares about some little ones are wondering how to look after their kids so they don't get caught up in all that. First of all, I hesitated for a long time before recording this because even though I'm a mom of three wonderful children, I don't consider myself some sort of absolute expert in parenting. Sometimes I look at my kids and the way we interact and wonder if I'm doing everything right, whether I'm reacting the right way to certain everyday situations. I get as uncertain as many parents do. Some parents, on the other hand, believe the parent is always right, period, because they're the parent. That's a pretty common mindset. Or there are also plenty of people who, when they have children, really don't know how to deal with them, how to raise them, what approach to take. They might feel the kids are uncontrollable and end up pressuring them, which pushes the kids away, and so on. Problems between parents and children are as old as time. When a child reaches that stage of "don't poke into my personal life", well, that's a classic, and every generation goes through it. My mom told me she also had that stage, thinking her own mother didn't understand anything. Well, she was the younger generation who knew more. That's the usual parent-child relationship dynamic. But in this video, I'm not focusing on psychological or relationship advice per se. This channel isn't about strict psychology. You can find all kinds of tips and methods in psychology resources. Here I mostly want to emphasize how crucial it is to be aware of what we teach our children, what we show them about life, what we say to them, and so on. I'll draw partly on my own experiences, not just as a mother, but also in how my mom raised me and the role that played in my life. As I've said before, when children first arrive here, when they're born, they haven't yet severed their energetic connections. They're not fully immersed in the metrics yet, so they still remember something of how it is up there. But of course, a child's consciousness is new, forming for this life. A blank slate of sorts for the soul that's now here in this incarnation. That soul might still have memory from before, because some ties haven't been cut. Many children recall not only past lives, but also the in-between space after death and before new birth. They might talk about experiences up there that they still sense. Many kids share these memories with their parents. When I was little, I did as well. Although I don't personally remember it, my mom does. Apparently, I used to talk about my past life, and when I got older and had certain recollections that I shared with her, she said, "Wes, you told me something like that when you were a child." That confirmed my memories. So my first piece of advice is not to ignore your child if they mention memories of past lives or say things like, "Oop, you there? It's different." Many parents dismiss it as mere fantasy or say, "Stop making things up." But even if your child really is just being imaginative, there's a difference between ordinary make-believe and the real recollections or feelings they have from the soul's perspective. Most important is this: do not tell your child. You're just imagining things that can't exist, especially when it comes to subtle plane experiences. Speaking from my own example, I know that one big reason my abilities, so the ones I've had since childhood, never got blocked was that my mom never told me, "Stop making up nonsense." Whenever I mentioned something about subtle energies or past lives, she never said, "You're just making that up." That kind of acceptance is vital for a child. Or for a kid, being labeled odd or different can be traumatic, so if you dismiss their subtle perceptions outright, they might shut them down. Another frequent scenario is that children see subtle, plain entities. This happens a lot. My own kids see them all the time. They'll say, "Mom, look, there's some weird creature over there." And indeed it's there. Some parents ignore this, assuming it's fear or the child's imagination. or that something's wrong with the kid. I've come across cases where very young kids who can barely talk keep waking up crying every 5 or 10 minutes. Of course, there are teething periods, colic, and so forth, but sometimes everything else is fine, and you can't figure out what's wrong except that they feel uneasy unless they're always in your arms. It can indicate they're bothered by these critters, for lack of a better word. That's where the idea of setting boundaries comes in. You can set energetic boundaries for your children, refusing to let negative entities come near them, and cleansing their energy spaces, at least until they're energetically of age. I don't mean 18 as in being legally allowed to buy alcohol, but rather that point when a child can fully make decisions for themselves, including how they manage their personal boundaries. Usually, this maturity starts around age 11 or 12. By about 12, kids are capable, energetically, to decide what is or isn't acceptable for them. Of course, as parents, you can still set broader family boundaries, like no harmful entities can enter our home, but at that adolescent point, you can't simply go in and fix them as though they're still a toddler. You must respect free will, same as you do with any adult. That doesn't mean you ignore the child's free will before age 12. Of course not. A baby's soul is still a free soul with free will, whether it's 3 months old or 13 years old. But as parents, our job is to introduce them to the world, pass along what we've learned, and teach them how to live safely. However, in my personal opinion, pushing them too hard, like you must do it my way, often backfires. The child may do the opposite just to prove a point, or end up feeling suppressed. We should respect the child's free will while still guiding them. I've been through these things and I'll help you learn about them. But your life is still your choice. That's generally how I see it. Let the child make choices in everyday life, even small things. If you don't want them eating junk food or sweets, for instance, you can still give them options they can choose from, an apple or a banana, so they feel some freedom. Understand that a child is not your subordinate, they're a dependent being, yes, but they also deserve respect as individuals. Many parents unintentionally remind the child too often, you depend on me, so you'll do what I say. But that can lead to negative outcomes later. So keep that in mind. Returning briefly to my own mom, one thing she always did was treat me as an equal in conversation. She never acted like I'm the parent, so I don't have to explain anything to you. I felt respected. She spoke to me as though I were already an adult, which allowed me to share everything with her. Some parents draw a strict line. I'm the parent, you're the child. I don't owe you an explanation, and then wonder why their kids don't trust them as they grow older. So, if you want your children to come to you to tell you things, don't erect that barrier in the first place. Also remember a child is a soul, an old soul with possibly more lives under its belt than you. It's a being that's lived many incarnations. Right now, yes, it has a young, developing consciousness, but that doesn't mean it's an empty shell. Treat that soul respectfully. Realize that in this life they're learning how to navigate a body from babyhood to adulthood, but they might have unique knowledge from prior existences, so treat them as a person with their own history. If they want to eat candy all day, for example, sure, you can guide them. Candy's delicious but can be harmful if you eat too much, or always cross at the green light. You're introducing them to the world as it is, but you don't have to stifle them with narrow thinking or negative programs. We know most psychological traumas come from childhood. It's widely recognized that a lot of what complicates adult life can be traced back to how parents or authority figures acted back then. So, if you want to avoid giving your kids that burden, pay attention to the messages you send them. Don't teach them nothing's possible, or we'll never have enough money to do that. Don't tell them we can't move to a different city or country, or we can't go to the beach because we're poor, or you'll never become a great wizard, or a famous athlete or an artist, and so on. Too many parents think they're simply teaching kids the harsh truth of life, but they're actually stifling them with the notion of impossibility. Then the child grows up with a mentality of we can too. We're not the kind of people who do that, which can be tough to shake later. Even teachers sometimes say horrific things like, "Oh, you're a troublemaker, you'll end up in jail," basically planting negative seeds in a child's mind. Some kids internalize those messages and actually head down that path. Or parents might keep hammering at a kid, "You're always disobedient. You're going to end up in trouble one day." And eventually something happens that confirms the parent's negative prophecy. The parent says, "See, I knew it." But in reality, it was the parent who laid down those negative scripts in the child's life, often reinforced by the strong energetic link between parent and child. So be careful with your words. Say, "You're wonderful, you're kind, you can't, you can do it, great," rather than telling them they're worthless or they'll end up rotting under a bridge. Encouragement doesn't mean spoiling them, though there's a big difference between providing healthy support and letting the child run wild with zero discipline. For instance, if the child draws a lovely picture, praise it. Build their self-esteem. That helps prevent huge self-confidence issues in the teen years. I remember how, as a teenager, I too questioned my appearance. Everyone does. A negative attachment or thought form might whisper, "You ugly, you look weird." But my mom kept telling me, "You're beautiful, you're great." That reassurance mattered a lot. I believed her, and now as an adult, I genuinely feel confident. So please tell your kids they're beautiful, they're wonderful, they're talented. Let them dream. Don't shoot down their dreams. There's also money talk. Some parents keep telling their kids how poor they are, that they can't afford anything, that life is full of limitations. The child absorbs it like a sponge. A small child has no concept of rich or poor until you put it in their heads, whether you have a lot of money or a little. Try to avoid burying your kids in a mindset of lack. Don't say, "We're stuck in this bottom tier. We'll never get to that top tier." That's basically handing them a rigid social caste system. Instead, you can say, "Look, we've accomplished certain things, but you can do much more. The whole world is open for you." That way, the child doesn't grow up thinking they're permanently locked into your financial or social status. Interestingly, children themselves can be catalysts for parents. They still have that unbroken sense of possibility, so you can encourage them to lead to imagine a wonderful outcome. Picture that we can afford a better place or take a big trip. Their open-ended dreaming might even help your own life shift to match that energy. Don't exploit them, of course. "Hey, you magical kid, conjure me a villa in Miami." But do keep in mind how powerful their unblocked intention can be. Yes, children's intentions often manifest quickly, especially for little things. Many parents have stories of how a child wanted something so strongly that it just materialized. Feel free to share those stories. I love reading them. Kids have fewer mental blocks, so their intentions can be astonishingly effective. Again, it's crucial not to smother that with limiting beliefs or negative scripts. So, to tie it all together, don't load your children with stereotypes and rigid boundaries. Stereotypes can be one of the worst forms of limitation. Don't tell them, "You're a bad kid, everything will go wrong for you," or "You'll end up in jail," or "Nobody will want to be friends with you." Some parents justify it as, "I'm warning them about the dangers," but in reality, it's harmful. Tell them, "You're wonderful, but maybe this particular action wasn't very kind. Think about how you'd feel if someone did that to you." That approach fosters understanding without labeling them as bad people. Also, don't let anyone, teacher, relative, or whomever speak to your child in destructive ways like, "You'll just become a homeless addict," or "You'll never amount to anything." I've heard stories of teachers telling kids, "You'll end up worthless," which is appalling. If your child's teacher or someone else in authority says such things, it shouldn't be ignored. It can cause genuine harm. So be vigilant not only in how you speak to your own kids, but in how others speak to them as well. If your child does something wrong, address the behavior without tearing down the child as a whole. Explain why it was hurtful or unkind. Ask them to imagine if someone did the same to them. But keep emphasizing, Yod, still a good person. I just don't want you doing that again. This is the wise way to parent. You can guide them without smothering or ignoring their free will. And remember, children learn through their mistakes. Each time they trip up is still an opportunity to teach and support them. Yes, some parents go overboard with helicopter parenting or hypercare, but that's another topic. I've already talked at length, so maybe it's time to wrap up. My hope is that this video helps you in some small way. Perhaps you already knew these simple truths, but maybe hearing them reaffirms that you're going in the right direction. Or maybe something here highlighted an aspect you hadn't considered, like paying attention to how teachers speak to your child, or helping your child understand subtle playing concepts. For instance, I tell my child, if something hurts, let's remove that pain because we know an ailment is often just a program. He understands that. He's comfortable with the idea. I try not to program him with negative beliefs like if you eat an ice cream, you'll definitely get a sore throat, or if a classmate gets sick, you'll definitely catch it too. Those are the sorts of illness programs we can end up installing in our kids. If you want to learn more, I have a video on my channel about not getting sick, discussing how to cancel those illness programs. Anyway, that's about all I have to say on raising children for now. Also, remember that content about world events and politics from a subtle plane perspective is now in my Telegram channel. We discuss global happenings. I share what I see on the subtle plane, and so on, every Sunday. Before my weekly live stream in the Sonekni Club, I post podcasts in Telegram that anyone can watch or listen to. They're like full-fledged videos, really interesting and useful. So feel free to join if you're curious about global events through a subtle plane lens. Thanks for watching. That's all for now. I love you all. Big hugs from me. See you soon. Please like, subscribe, and share my channel. Become a member of my Telegram channel and discuss with like-minded people as a supporting club member.